Hi, welcome back to Talk Write, your source of all things writing and literature. Today I want to do another brilliant beginning by talking about my favorite modern novelist, David Mitchell. The book I'll be talking about, though, isn't widely considered one of David Mitchell's best. Usually when we talk about Mitchell, we talk about Cloud Atlas. Depending on who you are, you might also talk about his recent, more fantasy science fiction inspired stories. Slade House is one, Utopia Avenue. The one I want to talk about today, though, is Number9dream, which he published, I believe it was 2001. One of the reasons I like this novel is that even though it is one of Mitchell's earlier works, it still displays a lot of his characteristics. True, it doesn't have quite the flash, bang, razzmatazz fireworks of something like Cloud Atlas, but nevertheless, it still luxuriates in David Mitchell's classic prose style. There's also this really cinematic spectacle and flavor to it, which some readers have dismissed and said it makes the novel a little bit weaker. Actually, I quite like those bits. What I want to do now is take a look at the opening 2 pages, though, and just see how adept Mitchell is at crafting not only atmosphere and setting, but also character. It is a simple matter. I know your name, and you knew mine once upon a time. Eiji Miyake. Yes, that Eiji Miyake. We're both very busy people, Miss Kato, so why not cut the small talk? I am in Tokyo to find my father. You know his name, and you know his address, and you are going to give me both, right now. Or something like that. A galaxy of cream unribbons in my coffee cup, and the background chatter pulls into focus. My first morning in Tokyo, and I am already getting ahead of myself. The Jupiter Cafe sloshes with lunch hour laughter, Friday plottings, clinking saucers. Drones bark into mobile phones. She-drones hitch up sagging voices to sound more feminine. Coffee, seafood sandwiches, detergent, steam. I have an across-the-street view of the Panopticon's main entrance. Quite a sight, this zirconium Gothic skyscraper. Its upper floors are hidden by clouds. Under its tight-fitting lid, Tokyo steams minus 34 degrees Celsius with 86% humidity. A big Panasonic display says so. Tokyo is so close up you cannot always see it. No distances. Everything is over your head. Dentists, kindergartens, dance studios. Even the roads and walkways are up on murky stilts. Venice with the water drained away. Reflected airplanes climb over mirrored buildings. I always thought Kagoshima was huge, but you could lose it down in Side Alley in Shinjuku. I light a cigarette, Cool, the brand chosen by a biker ahead of me in the queue, and watch the traffic and passers-by on the intersection between Omekaido Avenue and Kita Street. Pinstriped drones, a lip-pierced hairdresser, midday drunks, child-laden housewives. Not a single person is standing still. Rivers, snowstorms, traffic bites generations, 1,000 faces per minute. Yakushima is 1,000 minutes per face. All of these people with their boxes of memories labeled parents. Good shots, bad shots, frightening figures, tender pictures, fuzzy angles, scratched negatives. It doesn't matter. They know who ushered them in on Earth. Akiko Kato, I am waiting. Jupiter Cafe is the nearest lunch place to Panopticon. It would be so much simpler if you would just drop by here for a sandwich and a coffee. I will recognize you, introduce myself, and persuade you that natural justice is on my side. How do daydreams translate into reality? I sigh. Not very well. Not every often. I will have to storm your fortress in order to get what I want. Not good. A building as huge as the Panopticon probably has other exits and its own restaurants. You are probably an empress by now with slaves to fetch your meals. Who says you even eat lunch? Maybe a human heart for breakfast tides you over until supper time. I entomb my cool in the remains of its ancestors and resolve to end my stakeout when I finish this coffee. I am coming in to get you, Akiko Kato. 3 waitresses staff Jupiter Cafe. One, the boss, is as brittle as an imperial dowager who poisoned her husband with misery. One has a braying donkey voice, and the third is turned away from me, but she has the most perfect neck in all creation. Dowager is telling Donkey about the hairdresser's latest failed marriage. When his wife fails to measure up to his fantasies, he throws her overboard. The waitress with the perfect neck is serving a life sentence at the sink. Are Dowager and Donkey cold-shouldering her, or is she cold-shouldering them? Level by level, the Panopticon disappears. The clouds are down to the 18th floor. The fog descends farther when I look away. I calculate the number of days I have been alive on a paper serviette. 7,290, including 4 leap years. The clock says 5 to 1, and the drones drain away from Jupiter Cafe. I guess they're afraid they'll get restructured if 1 o'clock finds them anywhere but their striplit cubicles. My coffee cup stands empty in a moat of slops. Right. When the hour hand touches 1, I'm going into the Panopticon. I admit I'm nervous. Nervous is cool. A recruitment officer for the self-defense forces came to my high school last year and said that no fighting unit wants people who are immune to fear. Soldiers who don't feel fear get their platoon killed in the first 5 minutes on the battlefield. A good soldier controls and uses his fear to sharpen his senses. One more coffee? No. One more cool to sharpen my senses. So the first thing I want to say about this passage is that even though it gives you a lot of details and a lot of atmosphere, it gets right to the point. We immediately know who we're dealing with. We have this kid, Eiji Miyake. We immediately know what he wants, that is to find his father. We know where he is, that is Jupiter Cafe. We know what he is going to do to find his father, which is to go into the Panopticon skyscraper and talk to a woman, Akiko Kato. We get all of that within the first 10 lines. So immediately we are centered in the story, we're centered in the protagonist, we're centered in his wants, his desires, but we also get a lot of his character in this as well. We know we're dealing with a kid. We know when he talks at the very end of this section that he was in high school as early as last year, so he can't be any older than 18 or 19 years old. And he has a kid's perspective. We think a little bit about Holden Caulfield talking about people who are fake when our protagonist here talks about the drones who are coming into the cafe and the drones who are walking outside. So we are very much embedded in a teenager's voice. We also get that in the fact that he keeps switching his perspective from Panopticon to the beautiful waitress over here to his own thoughts. We have a jumble of his sense impressions, and all of this just kind of kaleidoscopes and collides with one another. The other thing that you pick up after you've read the novel is just how much foreshadowing he accomplishes here. We know, just because of the genre of the novel, that he wants to find his father, so we know he's going to find his father. But he also talks about just the fog, the tremendous fog that hangs heavy over Tokyo. And he talks about it like Venice with the stilts removed, or Venice without any of the water. Now that's important because in the very last chapter, we will have something like a flood coming into the city. And actually, in the middle of this chapter, we will also get a flood. Another thing he gives us is the relationship with the waitress. Here, she's just a beautiful neck, but later on, she becomes his love interest. Again, all of that is being accomplished in the first 1 to 2 pages. Something else I love is just how much it nails the first-person perspective. There can be a tendency when you use first person to overuse the first-person pronoun. Here we don't get that, and it's largely because of the stream of consciousness style. So we do have these occasional moments where the narrator tells us what he's doing. He says, I light a cigarette, or am waiting in Jupiter Cafe, etc., but we don't have that much of it. And in fact, these details are really just to kind of focus us back on the narrator and what he's doing, and to remind us that real time is passing while he's waiting. The first person also seamlessly slips in these bits of backstory to help with the perspective. He talks about Kagoshima and just how dwarfed it is compared to Tokyo. So we know that he's from Kagoshima. And if we don't know what that is, we know just from the fact that he says here it's 1,000 faces in a minute versus Kagoshima, it's a minute in 1,000 faces. We know that he's from a very remote sort of island place and that he's coming to the big city probably for the first time. But the main thing that sticks out for me here is the use of language. Mitchell is an absolute master of prose stylistics, and you really get it right here so well. In my video on Dickens' Bleak House, I mentioned how he uses a kind of pointillist technique to characterize London. That is, he piles up all of these usually single word sentences to describe the city, kind of like the way a pointillist will compose the image by doing a bunch of these small dots. The same technique is used right here with Mitchell's use of lists. Just look at what Mitchell does here in the cafe. The Jupiter Cafe sloshes with lunch hour laughter, Friday plottings, clinking saucers, drones bark into mobile phones, she-drones hitch up sagging voices to sound more feminine. Great line. Coffee, seafood, sandwiches, detergent, steam. Okay, again, there's one of our pointillist techniques right there. Another one is when he's talking about Tokyo, which is physically imposing. It is literally above the character, not just above his rank and social identity, but physically above him. And he talks about everything else that's above him. Dentists, kindergartens, dance studios, and then of course the Panopticon Tower. Now, with another writer, you might get drowned in all the details and lose your focus. That never happens here with Mitchell because he keeps the focus razor tight on the two primary characters. We have the protagonist, Eiji Miyake, I think that's how you say it. And we also have Akiko Kato. Now, Mitchell might have just kept the opening to those two characters, and that would have been fine, but the setting would have lacked depth, and it wouldn't have had as much detail as we have here. What he's really good at doing here is populating the atmosphere, but still keeping the focus on the two main characters that we are concerned about. And we have a really brilliant technique that he introduces when he's talking about the shop owners. We have these three people and their conversation makes up some of the background, but he doesn't give us their names because he knows that might just kind of throw us off and introduce some confusion. Rather, he calls them Dowager and Donkey. That's a great way to introduce these two characters. It not only provides the narrator's perspective about them, but it also gives them an identity. So they're not just mere talking heads. At the same time, were he to give them proper Japanese names, it might just be one more sort of name for us to follow, and then our attention would become more frayed. So his use right here of nicknames, it's a really good technique to introduce atmosphere, to introduce detail, to introduce depth in this setting, while still keeping the focus on the main characters. The last thing this is really good at doing is introducing the main theme for really the entire book. Now we know that this is Number9dream, which is both a John Lennon song and also references dreams and dreamlike surreal realities. So we know dreams are going to be a pretty big piece of this. He even has a wonderful quote that summarizes a lot of his perspective. He says, "How do daydreams translate into reality? Not well." So we know that we're going to be dealing with daydreams. In fact, not to give away the game, but the whole first chapter is nothing but a series of big daydreams. So we also have this idea, the dream imagery, the dream theme that is going to play a bigger part later on in the story. Now, like I said, Number9dream does have its flaws, but for all those reasons I've mentioned and more, it certainly has a brilliant beginning. Hi guys, thank you so much for watching that. If you enjoyed that, go ahead and consider subscribing to my channel or also following me on Substack. And if you really like what I do, you might also consider checking out my book, Cheers! Around the World in 80 Toasts, a compendium of all the different ways to toast around the world. Thank you so much. Happy reading.